Good afternoon and welcome to today's Digital Dealer webinar. Today's webinar is sponsored by Conversica and PCG Companies and is titled, Will Artificial Intelligence Replace Your Employees this year? Today's webinar presenters are Brian Pasch, founder of PCG Companies, and John Ruble, General Manager of Conversica. This webinar will run approximately 1 hour with a question and answer session at the end. Before we begin today's presentation, we'd like to get some background information on our audience, and if you guys would please answer this quick poll question and we will get started. All right, thank you guys for your responses. Please welcome Brian and John.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yes, I'm here. I'm excited for today, John.
Okay, we are on the first slide. We're going to talk a little bit today about the buzz about artificial intelligence, how it's affecting today's modern dealership. And Brian's going to take off with the intro.
Great. So everyone who's in the automotive industry understands that we've had a number of challenges. In increasingly, dealers are seeing shrinking margins. Their cost of labor is going up. And the biggest challenge for our industry is to figure out how we can be more profitable. It's not easy to increase sales. We don't have the ability to create margins. So what do we know? We know very simply that as warranty pay rates are declining, maintenance schedules extending, customers less loyal, dealers are really in a tough situation. They have these multi-million-dollar investments. The manufacturers are forcing them to invest more in their physical properties, yet at the same time, they're making less money per car sold. So today, we're going to address a very timely topic which will help everyone who's listening to today's webinar and those who hear it as a referral, that we have some great news to help dealers become more profitable. And I'm going to summarize them in 3 clear points, and I'd like you to take these 3 points back to the management team and take action on each of these 3 points. Number 1, we have to increase our marketing effectiveness. What does that mean? It means for every ad dollar that we're spending, we need to be producing more sales opportunities. And there's a number of products out there today that are helping dealers target their marketing better. But then Conversica is also helping dealers turn those opportunities into sales. So that's the second point. In order for us to be more profitable, we need to take those opportunities, which are now maximized, and convert them into a sale. And today we're going to talk about how artificial intelligence can increase marketing effectiveness, how it can increase sales effectiveness. And here's the third point. There is a general trend that dealers are realizing is that they need to reduce labor costs in order to be profitable. That means if technology, if AI can reduce the time it takes to get a sale, if we can streamline the sales process, if we can do it with less people because of artificial intelligence, it is truly a success story for the auto industry. And today we're going to show you exactly how dealers are digging deeper, especially in fixed ops. John?
Yes. Again, thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. To really first talk about, will artificial intelligence replace my employees, we need to discuss some of the challenges we face day to day in fixed ops. The first one kind of surrounds staffing and maybe some of the processes we have in place for our current staff. We know that finding good people in our service departments is difficult. We're asking them to do many tasks. We have peak hours in our service drive, so it's very difficult for our staff to follow processes that we have in place. The reason for that is based on the sheer number of records that we have in our DMSs. And I like to use kind of the comparison between sales and service at this point. You know, most of our sales department on the variable side have a CRM to maintain a relationship with their customers. Yet on the fixed side, we don't see it. We don't see CRMs being utilized at a high level. And the number one reason for that is just, again, the sheer number of records. Even if our service personnel were able to utilize a CRM, they would find it very difficult to maintain all the touch points to scale that personal outreach. So that's why you see fixed ops not utilizing the CRM, the customer relationship management system. So it's impossible for people in our dealership, especially when we're understaffed, maybe have new staff, turnover. It's virtually impossible to scale a multi-touch personal approach or outreach to our customer database. And obviously, when we can't do that, we have defection. In today's climate, and really for decades, we've relied solely on marketing to solve this. And let's talk about marketing a little bit. I would think that most people on the webinar would agree that our outreach for marketing is typically mailers, coupon offers, discounts, or we're waiting for the customer to take initiative, maybe come to our website, go through your service schedule, or service their vehicle on their own. But we, again, don't have the ability right now to scale that personal outreach. The challenge we're facing is traditional marketing is seeing really fragmented and declining results. Direct mail results are down. Mass email campaigns, we're getting big problems with spam. So our customers aren't seeing the message that we know that is really, truly important. At this point, we're going to take another quick question so we can kind of go through the rest of the webinar.
So the question obviously here is, what is your primary retention strategy? And your choices are direct mail, email campaigns, BDC outreach, loyalty program, or factory programs. And by factory programs means that you're just signing up for the OEM stock marketing drops that go out to the customer. So let's see what the results were on that poll so we can move on.
And we'll only have one more question for everyone on the line towards the end.
Great. Okay, so we can see, John, that BDC outreach, number one, email campaigns, number two, both of those have a tremendous amount of labor associated with them, don't they, John?
They sure do. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, Brian, about how the landscape is in the dealership and the ability for folks to actually do those first two. So we'll go ahead and move on. Thank you, everybody, for participating in that poll. So right now, these are some of the more popular or more common personal outreach scenarios. In some dealerships, we may have advisors, taking inbound phone calls for appointments. In some cases, maybe trying to set a future service visit or even making a phone call. But those guys and ladies are really occupied with the people that are in the drive at the time, especially during peak times. And that's really what they're good at, and that's what we want them to do. In some stores, we have administration people in the back office or a shared resource like a parts cashier that may make a phone call to remind of an appointment. We also, in some stores, have BDCs in the higher volume stores, but we don't see it nearly as much as we do in sales. The challenge we have, and what we found at Conversica from our feedback and our data from our customers, it takes more than just one contact to get a customer engaged to do service at the dealership. Most of these scenarios that we just talked about are one and done. They call and leave a voicemail. They might send one email, and that usually goes hand in hand with maybe a direct mail campaign. But it's one shot at the customer.
And John, one thing that I want to challenge everyone on today's call, before you see some of the data from Conversica, can you answer this question? Based on your service marketing efforts, your customer retention strategy, how many attempts does it take for someone to respond to you? Meaning, isn't it funny, we have these CRMs, we have BDCs, and if I ask the BDC manager, on average, how many phone calls and emails or text messages does it take to get a consumer to respond, they wouldn't know. And today, John is going to show you some examples, and the number is absolutely going to shock you, and it's also going to pin the foundation on why we need artificial intelligence to supplement our human capital. So, John, continue.
Absolutely, and thank you, Brian. Data helps us make better decisions on our process, and that's a gaping hole in today's fixed ops, is not having the ability to know that data. So, thank you, Brian. Here is the prime example of the condition of our customers and what they expect, and how rapidly the environment's changing. In 2015, if you'll see the graphic on the left, internet advertising expenditures was 27.8% of the dealership's total budget. Just 2 years later, that number has already risen to over half. So we went from about a third to a half just in 2 years. What does that tell us? It tells us that our customers are, digital, but it also, we're living in a now age. We want information now. If we want to service our vehicle, we want answers now. So we've really gone to an engagement request or need from our customers. Unfortunately, our traditional media does not accommodate our current customer. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Artificial intelligence, and again, there's a buzz about it right now. Conversica has been doing this for almost 10 years. So even before AI was cool, dealers were utilizing AI to scale personal outreach to customers. The beauty of what AI does is, because it's perceived as a live person, we actually can engage at a rate of 10 times that of traditional media. 10 times. And the customers love it. It touches each segment, each life cycle trigger point of our customers at the right time with the right message. And we talked earlier about how busy our people can get in the service drive. It doesn't get tired and it doesn't cherry pick. It follows your process of outreach to the customers. One of the ways that we get such high engagement is we actually use Amazon cloud servers for our email deliverability. They use rotating IP addresses. They've never sent graphics or links or discounts. So our emails actually get into the customer's email box. So that's one of the secret sauces at Conversica. It does scale that personal outreach that I talked about. It doesn't matter if you've got 5,000 records in your DMS or 25,000 records in your DMS. It's able to talk to each customer at the right time, again, with the right message. And the messaging is always changing. That's the nature of artificial intelligence. So your customers never really will suspect that they're talking to an AI. Our AI is super.
And John,
go ahead.
Let me just add something there, because these are really good points for everyone to consider. Listen, if you're running a BDC, whether it's sales and service, you know that BDC's lifetime, there's been good months and bad months. You've had good managers and bad managers, high closing rates and low closing rates. The truth of the matter is that this multi-million-dollar business is sitting on a gold mine called the DMS, based on customers who've purchased cars or serviced cars. And we've not taken the value of that data seriously, serious enough that could result in hundreds of thousands of dollars of more profit per year, because we've always thought we've been limited by our management skills or our ability to hire the right person. And when you really sit and look at this list, dealers can't do this list. It's just not in their DNA. You can't help but cherry pick. Every BDC person does it. Dealers are sending out all sorts of crappy emails that are getting their email servers blacklisted. They're busy, they're distracted, they're sick, they're on vacation. Whatever the scenario is, we have to take this multi-million-dollar database more seriously. Back to you, John.
Thank you, Brian. You know, the beauty of a true AI or machine learning is it learns as it gathers more information, the more emails, the more correspondences it has with customers. Our AI actually can read the responses from the customers and either respond back or notify somebody in the dealership. So when Brian talked about reducing labor costs, she can really, or the AI can really funnel all the hottest customers into your people's hands and save a lot of time and labor and money by doing so. And lastly, you know, we know our factories love a good CSI score. The responses that we see from customers, many times they're shocked that they're getting a personal outreach from the dealership. They love it. They apologize many times for not answering to the very first email that goes out. So they love the convenience of it. And we'll talk more about that as we go through. Brian, I believe you actually pulled a customer for this dealer testimonial, correct?
That's right. And everyone who's on today's webinar should know that at PCGresearch.com, we have over 25 different free research reports, including Conversica AI for sales and a separate report for Conversica AI for service, which we're talking about today. And we took the time to call up dealers and ask them questions. This is Tyler's response. I don't need to obviously read the screen, but here's the bottom line. Conversica for the Capital Automotive Group is giving pleasant and persistent outreach that their competitors are not delivering or even can't afford to deliver using human capital. And that's what dealers need to understand, is that we're not saying let the AI do all the work. It's saying let AI do all the heavy lifting, get someone engaged and involved in a service conversation, then pass it to your human capital. And that is a huge difference in strategy for most dealers.
One of the other things, Brian, we hear in our testimonials from dealers is when they see how the AI works, they realize that they've been reactive to their service customers for decades. And it gives you a competitive edge. You know, if your dealership's talking to everybody at the right time with the right message, the likelihood of that customer going somewhere else to service their vehicle diminishes. So it's a great testimonial and a common one. So let's talk about how AI can affect change in your dealership and some of the segments that the AI will go after. Any new leads that may be coming in from your website or third-party website providers, she can actually have a conversation with those customers. And again, as Brian stated, kind of funnel that conversation to the point where a human gets involved. If your dealership is doing a 30-day pit stop to reorient the customer to the service drive, the AI can actually help facilitate the communication to set that up. The same thing with a first service visit. The AI is smart enough to know between models if you've got a vehicle that runs synthetic oil versus maybe non-synthetic oil, when that first service interval should be and reaches out at separate times for maybe the same car, but a different model of that car. Obviously, next service visit, if a customer has come in and closed an RO for maintenance, we still want to reach out and start getting them in for their next and consecutive visits. What we found, the longer you're on the AI tool with Conversica in service, the customers get conditioned to our emails and actually start utilizing the email to schedule their appointment. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Decline services, if your service writers are putting decline opcodes on the RO, the AI can pick up on that and actually message the customer about coming in and completing those recommended services. Oversight is our conversations in between all these other segments. When a customer hasn't engaged for maybe the pit stop, the first visit, next, decline, she kind of fills in the middle and reaches out to the customer to keep that customer engaged with the dealership. We can also do a pre-CSI conversation that goes out as soon as the RO is closed, just to see how the visit went. It's not really pandering to the factory survey. What we're really trying to find out is, did they have a good experience? And if not, the AI will read that they did not and notify a manager, hey, we've got somebody that needs some outreach from a human or a manager to resolve the issue before the factory survey goes out. And then another big category for us, which gets really high engagement, are lost or defected customers. Those are customers that have not been in the service drive in over 12 months. Those intervals can be changed based on your franchise, longer or shorter. We have really good engagement from that. These are customers that maybe are getting ready to go somewhere else for service, or maybe they went somewhere else for their first or second visit, and now we've got them re-engaged and back into your dealership. Factory recalls, we know that those are hard to handle, especially from a human capital standpoint. The AI can actually reach the whole list, regardless of how large it is, and actually contact those customers about their recall. And then if you're in a state that does annual state inspections, the AI can actually accommodate those conversations and help schedule those appointments. Now we're going to look at a dashboard of what a user of Conversica service would look at. There's some really good information here. We can look at, in this particular store, I think this screenshot was from about a week ago, the AI was able to engage 33% of the customers in the DMS that fell into a category, one of those trigger points for life cycle. And those are the conversations I just showed you on the previous screen. Here's where the scalability comes down. If you look where it says customers messaged, 11,000. So just in a 30-day period, we were able to find 11,000 customers that fell into a life cycle trigger point. It took 34,000 messages to those 11,000 messages to get that 33% engagement. So when we look at the human capital, our people can't scale that large and give that personal outreach.
And John, that number of 8, the average number of messages that had to be sent to get someone to respond. I really want everyone listening to today's webinar and ask yourself, do you have a pleasant and persistent process that's working 24/7, 365 days a year, that doesn't give up, and that is following your exact workflow to optimize revenue? And if you're really honest, that number 8, and in some dealers, John, right, it can be 10 or 12, that the number of contacts required to get someone to engage, it doesn't mean you're bothering them. They're just not ready to respond. And that is why you need help for your human capital.
That's a great point, Brian. We may send a direct mail piece, but that customer is not ready. We know where that direct mail piece goes. Same thing with a mass email campaign. It's probably a 1 or 2 time shot. If we don't catch them at the right time, we're not going to engage that customer. One of the other indicators or key performance indicators on this dashboard is closed ROs. We actually track how many ROs were created from the conversations that the AI had with the customers, and it's a very conservative number. In order for us to count an RO as a closed RO from the AI, that customer must have fallen into one of our trigger points. The customer had to engage in a two-way conversation with the AI. The customer had to say, yes, I want to do service. And lastly, that customer has to show up in the service drive within 30 days and close an RO. So if you start doing the math on what would it cost to have a whole team of people creating that number of ROs versus one AI that does a better job of it, it seems pretty clear that AI is the answer. Now let's just talk about what the AI says to the customer. I know that's a concern sometimes. Brian, your feedback from dealers when you polled them, were there any concerns about an AI reaching out to their customers?
Yes, it's a very common thing. Well, listen, I have a BDC. How do I make sure I'm not over messaging? One of the things that dealers need to understand is that if you're going to be more profitable, we have to reduce labor costs. If you know ahead, and dealers know this, that at least 30% of every email lead that comes into the dealership will never get a response by your BDC, why are you investing your valuable resources to go after 100% of the leads? Let the AI identify the people who are ready to respond, and then let the people, the humans that you have, start to take over that conversation. And when dealers finally understand that, like, hey, I can maybe save a full-time employee in the BDC by stop wasting, 4 people's time in the BDC. One person is absolutely completely wasted if they're a high volume store trying to go after leads.
Great point. And Brian, for stores that don't have a BDC, the AI assistant is almost like the best the BDC you can get. So here's an actual engagement of a customer, and I won't read everything, but I just want to point out some insightful information. One, if you look on the left of your screen, you'll see the sent message that says, "Hi, James. I hope you've been doing well. I just want to reach out because it's been a while since we've seen you." So this is a customer that hadn't been in the service drive in over a year. One thing to note, Amy at the bottom, who sent the email, is not somebody from the dealership. It's actually the AI. So Amy sent 3 more messages, if you look at the center of your screen, that were similar, but, polite. The customer finally responds on the 3rd. So about 2 weeks later, "Okay, Amy, you win. Anytime next week except Tuesday, just let me know when, please not too early in the morning." Amy actually reads that response from the customer and responds back. And in the 3rd paragraph, you'll see it. If it is more convenient for you to schedule an appointment online, there would actually be a link to your X-Time Scheduler, Time Highway, whatever service scheduling tool you're using. This mitigates inbound phone traffic and obviously that labor cost that Brian refers to. So the AI can actually engage the customer and facilitate the appointment. Time saving everywhere. The customer's experience is great. It's a win-win. Now, Brian talks a lot about loss or blind spots in the dealership. One of the beauties of AI is once it's engaged the customer and found out that, hey, this customer needs to talk to a human, it actually sends an alert to somebody in the dealership via email or text that says, hey, this customer has these questions, and it actually shows the history of the conversation that the AI had with that customer in that alert. But she's going to shut off for a couple days and then respond back to that customer and say, hey, I just want to make sure that John got you all the information you needed. So this one went out to Robert from Amy about declined services. Well, the customer responded back and said, hi, what is the service and how much is it? This gives you some visibility that maybe somebody in the service drive put on the RO that they recommended a service, but the customer either misunderstood it or weren't presented properly what was recommended. We catch that there. The AI will send out a message saying, hey, John would like to call you. What's the best number to reach you at? The customer actually gives us a better phone number. We shut off, and then we respond back and said, hey, did John get a hold of you? The customer responds back and says, hello, I've never heard from anyone. This is a blind spot in many dealerships and fixed operations where, again, they're busy in the service drive. This will diminish the number of customers that fall through the cracks. This is a customer that's interested in doing the services that are recommended. There's money there and there's ROs there. Yes.
And John, let me add one thing. In this particular example, this is where a phone call task was dropped. But there are many situations that Conversica uncovers where maybe the consumer wanted a quote and an email was sent. And in the CRM, it looks like it was sent, meaning the manager looks and says, yeah, we sent that. But it doesn't mean that the consumer got it. So just as Conversica is asking, hey, by the way, do you have everything you need? And in this case, no, I never heard from anyone. The same thing happens with email, and dealers don't have visibility into that blind spot of email delivery or phone calls missed. Conversica is your sales insurance policy that really identifies these customers who are at risk of defecting.
Excellent point. Thank you, Brian. And what Brian's talking about is visibility, and I'll show you just a couple examples of the visibility that AI can give you. It actually tracks the conversations and what the customer says, not checkboxes in a CRM or a DMS. This is the true feedback from the customers. The first dashboard I'm going to show is by each one of those segments that we talked about: next service visit, service abandonment, first service, pre-CSI, how likely those customers are to engage with the AI, what the percentage of those customers are, how many are still interested in doing service that have not come in and closed an RO, and how many customers actually did close an RO from that conversation. This information we can't get anywhere else. So when we're looking at marketing dollars and where to allocate them, you can use this dashboard to say, hey, we're getting really good results on our first service appointment. Let's move some of our marketing dollars to another segment of customer that doesn't engage with an AI. So now you can get very, very specific with your marketing dollars. Again, going back to the first slide that Brian talked about, increased marketing effectiveness. Again, a home run here. And then from a coaching standpoint, Brian talked about the blind spot. We actually list each employee in the dealership that touches our customers in fixed ops, and we'll tell you by percentage and number how many of the customers for each rep said, no, Richard didn't get back to me, or no, Piero didn't get back to me. So if you've got somebody that's, above that 20%, 30% range, there's some coaching and mentoring going on. But also now they know that they're being held accountable because they know that you're watching. So again, it helps you manage the process that you have in place in your dealership. Brian, I think this is another one of your testimonials.
Yes, and again, when we do a research report, we just don't get a demo and write a report. We're very interested in seeing how it's working. And one of the things that people are doubters of is like, well, Brian, okay, I get it. There's this AI thing, but I don't think people really engaged. But the funny thing is that dealer after dealer will tell you stories that, just like John, they even try to hire these people, these AI assistants. They're like, hey, I want to talk to Lisa. Why? Something. And, oh, hi, this is Lisa. And like, oh yeah, I want to hire you. You're really good. Or people come in and say, oh, I have a thank you for, Lisa, whatever. And then the second piece, which John here from the Cutter Auto Group brings out, is that the second wow, meaning people coming in or talking to the bot as if it's a real person. That's the first wow. The second wow is, wow, I didn't realize how many holes were in our process. And when the dealer sees that leads at risk in the sales or service, opportunities unmet, balls dropped, it becomes truly, in a busy store, a $1 million solution.
Thank you, Brian, for reaching out to those customers. All right, and folks on the webinar, here's the last poll question.
And here's the question: what's your biggest challenge? Is it time management to properly contact your customers? Is it CSI? Meaning we're not doing a good job of serving our customers' needs. Is it a staffing issue? We can't find people to work in the service drive that can do a great job. Or is it our marketing? We're throwing money at things that we can't seem to move the needle with service. Or, hey, you know, we do a great job, but we're very inconsistent with communicating. Some months we may send something, some months we're not. But more importantly, we're probably just sending a generic message to everyone. Those are your choices. What's your biggest challenge? Go ahead and answer that, and we'll pop up the results, because this will give you a little reflection that you're not alone in the challenges that you face in the service drive. So let's end that poll and pop that up on the screen. There it is. Okay. Number one is a staffing issue and consistent communications. They're tied. And when you understand what Conversica for Service can do, you really understand that this is a perfectly timed product to solve a persistent problem in fixed ops.
Thank you, Brian. So to answer the question, and one other thing I want to point out is the communications from the AI to the customer, they're not offering discounts. We're not giving coupons. So your effective labor rate actually goes up, and because your engagement is so high, you guys will see a pretty good hit to your bottom line. So, you know, the answer to the question, will AI replace our employees? No, it won't. It's going to, right now, in the current environment in fixed ops, it's going to mitigate the challenges we have with our staff, the scaling of employees and that personal outreach. In some cases, you'll actually probably hire more people because you're getting so many more engaged customers from your DMS, which is a good thing. So that is the answer to the question. At this point, we want to open it up to any Q&A. Brian's going to take the questions, and we'll probably both answer those questions. So
Great.
everybody on the webinar?
Yeah, so we have the ability for all attendees to ask questions. So go ahead. There has to be some people that are on today's webinar that's saying, it sounds too good to be true. Or, hey, this sounds like a great idea, but it won't work in my dealership because of X. I'd love to get some feedback from you to help guide our conversation. And here's the first one. John, doesn't being contacted by AI turn customers off? I guess we still have some doubters.
Well, we hear that one almost every time we present the product, Brian. The nature of her messaging is again, very polite. The messaging comes, it's not sequential like day after day after day. It's kind of spread out. The AI actually, because it is machine learning, learns when to message the customers and not bother them. Earlier when we talked about, 8 messages to get a response, that wasn't 8 messages to one customer. It was 8 messages per response. So we rarely get, an opt-out or stop messaging me. I mean, the number's less than 1% of the time that the customer says, wait, you're messaging me too much.
Well, that's great, John, to know, because what I know just from working with hundreds and hundreds of dealers and being involved in BDC workflows, dealers are afraid to over-communicate and at the same time often complain that their teams are under-communicating. So the great thing about the Conversica, it brings some consistency into play. All right, here's another question. I already have X time at my dealership for service scheduling. Doesn't that do the same thing as Conversica?
So Conversica really works well with service schedulers. The service scheduler's strength is getting that appointment set, looking at shop load, finding out the best time to complete that work. The challenge with that is, X-Time or some of these service schedulers may send out a reminder, but it's one and done, like we talked about earlier. Conversica's whole purpose is to engage the customer as a human would, probably better than a human, and then move them to X-Time or your scheduler to facilitate the rest of that process. So the two work really well hand in hand.
Great, John. And let me jump in and ask a question. I'm going to jump the queue here. John, as you look at your customer base, there's obviously going to be some managers who are part of multi-store groups that have a dedicated service BDC and can think about, wow, maybe I could save 25% of the time that my team is chasing sales and service opportunities and just focus on the people who respond. But isn't this product even more valuable for a small single point dealership that may be struggling with, running a profitable enterprise?
Well, I think the answer, Brian, is yes to both. We have some of the largest BDCs in the country, service BDCs, utilizing the tool to streamline their communications with their customers. They find that because the AI engages at such a high rate, they're having better results, having their BDC talk to people that are actually ready. And the customer satisfaction goes through the roof because of that. But in a small store, I think it's extremely important because they don't have the human capital like you discussed to launch this personal outreach to all those records in their DMS. So, it works really well in both scenarios. That's the beauty of Conversica. It can be kind of customized to the dealership process and flow, regardless if it's a single point small store or single point, large volume store, or, a large dealer group, one of the top 100.
And John, here's another question. When the dealer turns on the product, what reasonable expectation can you set for the service manager or the general manager on what type of lift in appointments or revenue that they can expect, and how long does it take?
So on the service side, because it is data mining, the AI is going into the DMS. The first month they'll see, in a lot of cases, another 80 to 100 ROs created from the conversations from the AI. The reason we know the AI works is each month after that number goes up incrementally. The third month, the fourth month, at about the six month mark, in some cases, they're hiring additional people to handle the responses and the alerts from the AI. So, it stages. You might see a 10% lift the first month, and then each month is another, 5 to 10%.
And John, that's so amazing. And I want to stop everyone to really understand what John said. I want to rephrase it because it's so important, is that AI does the heavy lifting consistently over time. So people who are on vacation may take longer to respond. People that are busy like myself may just keep on putting it off until the car starts making some noises. But that pleasant and persistent and relevant messaging continues to mine, to entice, to activate, to bring the dealership top of mind. And then you would expect over time, you would have more and more people respond because it's showing that the dealership cares. And for everyone who's listening to today's webinar, please focus on this. You have this multi-million-dollar investment in what is known as a franchise dealership, and you have this database of your ideal customers. Think about that. The people in your DMS are your ideal customers. And yet, when we want to sell more cars, we think of, let's just throw some more money at AdWords. Let's try to get more customers. The Conversica for Sales and Service takes existing opportunities in the bank opportunities and turns them into new revenue opportunities. And especially, John, what about people who are running like an equity mining process in the service drive? Have you seen any anecdotal or documented on how these additional ROs pulling people in who've been falling through the cracks is actually bringing some sales opportunities for equity mining?
You know, Brian, we just announced a couple partnerships with some equity mining companies, so we haven't gotten any data yet. Based on what we've seen from just normal, first appointment, next appointment, I think those numbers are going to be even higher as far as the engagement. I did want to touch on one other thing. When you talked about relevant conversation, Brian, and it kind of ties into, will the AI bother my customer? If a customer were to respond back from a message today here at the end of May and says, hey, I'm not going to be ready for service until like the second week of July, the AI is smart enough to read that response, shut herself off until the second week of July. Now, we know, and with human capital, it's likely that customer wouldn't get that touch in mid-July, but with the AI, they will. Any other questions on that?
That's a great point, John. Just relevant, timely, and meticulous at record keeping. John, one last question here from our readers. What's the biggest change that a dealer has to think about before installing Conversica? Meaning it's not in their dealership, their service manager or their general manager is a little, nervous. Is there any great advice on that implementation, how they can make sure that this is super successful?
So, Brian, one of the beauties of the tool for our fixed ops, because it is data mining, and it takes a little while for it to scale and start, sending a lot of alerts to the team, is its ability to not really have to change anything in the dealership. It's pretty plug and play. So really, if we teach, and we will train the staff there at the dealership how to manage the alerts they get. Management are really the only ones that will ever look in the dashboards that I showed earlier. And that's really just to get insight. They don't have to manage the tool. She manages herself. She raises her hand when she needs help, and then she follows up to make sure that help was completed. So, as the alerts start increasing, you'll find ways to tweak your process, but it's not a huge change for a store to install the solution.
Great. So I want to summarize our call today. Dealers are looking for new ways to increase their revenue without increasing their costs. We can do that by letting AI take existing opportunities, Conversica for sales with leads, and Conversica service for your existing DMS data opportunities, and be pleasant and persistent and relevant and timely and accurate to reach out to them to get them in the service drive. And when we do that, we're doing it with the existing processes that a dealer does. All we're doing is giving the dealer more swings at the plate. We're giving the dealer more ready to service customers. And that's why it really is not disruptive. It is something that can be implemented seamlessly as long as, John, they want to service more cars.
That's a fact.
Well, John, that's our questions from our panel. Any closing comments before we hand it back to Megan?
Again, we hear a lot about AI. Some of you may be thinking, am I ready for it? Again, because it's so easy to launch, there's nothing to be afraid of there. The biggest thing that we've seen, and it wasn't something that we planned on, was the customer's perception of it. In many cases, the customer is actually, after the third or fourth email, apologizing for not getting back to Amy, the AI. So the experience is really really pleasant for them. The second thing that we noticed, and again, we hadn't planned on it, was the longer you're on the service solution, the more the customers engage it and actually schedule the appointments using your service scheduler through our messaging. So from a human capital standpoint, the inbound calls start dropping. That's what the big BDCs that are using it found. They were able to make more outbound dials to interested customers and not take as many inbound calls, which, saves them time. So, you've got several huge advantages of AI. Again, it's not going to replace the employees in the store. It's actually going to augment what you want to accomplish that maybe you have challenges accomplishing.
Great. Well, John, thank you for giving us the opportunity to hear what you're doing to help dealers improve their profits, their retention, and their customer loyalty. Thank you for allowing PCG to do the research report. And I want to remind everyone who's listening to today's webinar that if you go to pcgresearch.com, you'll be able to download for free the Conversica AI for Service and the Conversica AI report for sales, 2 separate reports. Deep dive into the technology, explains how it works, talks to dealers, shares their real life experience. It's really wonderful reading for dealers who want to move that profit needle higher. So let's turn it back to our host at Digital Dealer, and thank you everyone for attending today.
Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian and John. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. To view this webinar on demand and future Digital Dealer webinars, please visit digitaldealer.com/webinars. Thank you and have a great day.